Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Building SaaS on AWS, the flagship show for managing your SaaS cost on Kubernetes. My name is Gunnar Grosch. I'm a developer advocate at AWS, and if you are planning or you are building a SaaS product, well, this is the show for you. What we do here on this show every other week is that we dive deep into SaaS-specific topics so you can learn more about building SaaS on AWS. And on every show, I am joined by a bunch of SaaS experts to dive deep into those SaaS topics. And this week is, of course, no different from the others. And this week, super happy to be joined by Lynn from Kubecost and Ranjit from AWS. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you, Gunnar.
Thanks, Gunnar.
All right, and we always do the quick round of introductions, of course. So, Ranjit, we can start with you. Maybe you're a returning guest to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. My name is Ranjit Raman. I'm a solutions architect with the AWS SaaS Factory team. And I believe many of you that have tuned into the show before would know what the SaaS Factory team does. But so what we do is we help companies designing and building and optimizing SaaS. We provide best practices and recommendations, and basically help accelerate their SaaS offerings to the market. So like Gunnar said, I'm a returning guest. It's probably my third or fourth time. It's always fun talking with you, Gunnar, about SaaS on AWS. So I'm happy to be back.
All right. Great to have you back, Ranjit. And then Lynn, first time on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Gunnar. So I am Lynn Lam, currently the solution architect at Kubecost. I have been at Kubecost for almost a year, helping integrating Kubecost with the other cloud provider and the partner. And I'm working mainly on the collaboration between Kubecost and AWS. And before Kubecost, I also worked at AWS as a senior solution architect for AWS Marketplace, help many SaaS provider to bring their product on AWS Marketplace. So happy to be on the show and happy to share, my experience and, about what Kubecost can help the other SaaS provider with their challenges.
Oh, great to have you here, Lynn. And as I mentioned early on, every show we have specific topics to dive into. And then this week, of course, since we have Ranjit on and we have Lynn on, we have a very exciting show. We're going to talk about managing your SaaS cost on Amazon EKS with Kubecost. And Ranjit, you've been on multiple times to talk about SaaS with Amazon EKS. And Lynn, of course, representing Kubecost in this case. And well, as we know, and the returning viewer of the show knows that using Kubernetes and Amazon EKS is a very common practice today, perhaps when building multi-tenant SaaS application to be able to utilize that flexibility and agility and so on of Kubernetes. But then why is cost allocation and important when you're building a SaaS environment? Ranjit.
Yeah. I strongly believe that cost attribution is extremely important if you're building a SaaS solution, like if you have a multi-tenant SaaS environment, because anytime you're sharing a set of resources, like the infrastructure or the database or storage, or for today's discussion, we are going to look at Kubernetes clusters. So anytime you're sharing that among multiple tenants, it is highly likely that not all tenants are using those set of resources, in the same way, right? They're not going to use those, in equal proportions, right? For example, you could have a tenant, or you might have a tenant that is making a whole bunch of API requests, like sending in a ton of API calls, and they signed up for one of the lowest tiers of a SaaS offering, or they're in one of the cheapest plans of a SaaS offering. And as a product, as a product manager, or a business person, you need to have visibility into that, into that consumption, and so that you can attribute that cost back to that tenant, right? And the thing is, it also helps from a business perspective, right? For example, you're a SaaS company and you have released a new feature, and you came up with some kind of a price point for that new feature, right? But you see that not not everyone is really using that feature. It hasn't gained enough traction yet. So if you're not tracking that, if you're not tracking consumption and in turn not attributing cost, it is very difficult for you to take decisions like, okay, maybe I should go back and talk to my customers on what is wrong with that feature, like what is going on, and perhaps adjust your pricing structure accordingly, right? So those are just a couple of reasons. I'm sure there are a lot of other reasons, but so that's why we always say tracking consumption, tracking cost, and attributing that cost back to the tenants is critical. It's extremely important, I would say, in a multi-tenant SaaS environment.
Yeah, so it's really important, I guess, then based on that, not only knowing what cost each tenant drives, but also how and what the entire environment with the different features and so on in the product actually cost you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Lyndon, from your perspective, I guess both as ex-AWS and now Kubecost, tell us a bit about how you see the importance of cost attribution.
Yeah, absolutely. So to add to Ranjit just share, from my experience and the story that I hear from many SaaS provider that I work with, many SaaS provider they share with me that they rely on the cost per tenant metrics as a key element for their business to building the strategy and shaping up the business strategy to offer a better package for their customer. And many SaaS provider even nowadays they rely on the cost per tenant to influence the pricing model and the tiering strategies that they adopted to offer to their customer. And on the SaaS, on their team, on their product development team, I also hear that they use the cost per tenant as a key metric to prioritize the product development and releasing the new feature that matter the most for their customer, right? And one of the important thing is that when they're releasing that feature and prioritize a specific feature, they need to ensure that it's not going to inflate their operational cost. And then on their operational team, with the visibility into the cost per tenant, that's help them to set the right guardrail and policies to scale the resource appropriately. And it can also help the operational team to make to predict the cost for like peak season, for example, and request the right resources to prepare for that peak season and prepare for like a higher unexpected workload during the peak season. So that is the story that I usually hear from many SaaS provider that I work with in my in my time at AWS and Kubecost.
Oh, that's great. And if you're a returning guest or a returning viewer on this show, you know that we want to make this interactive. So if you have questions, comments, just put them in the chat, and my SaaS expert guest will do their best to answer those questions. So come up with tricky questions for them, please. But Lynn, maybe we should back up a bit and talk about Kubecost then. So can you tell us what Kubecost is?
Yeah. Thank you, Gunnar. So Kubecost, we are the software that help you, the customer, to solve the challenge with the cost per tenant for SaaS provider, give you the visibility into the cost of the Kubernetes cluster. So we can give you the report of the cost for most of the Kubernetes context, starting from the cluster level down to the container level, give you the granular, with the visibility into the cost of your Kubernetes application. And we can also give you the visibility into the cost generated by AWS services as well. And you can map the associated cost of the AWS services to each Kubernetes context. So we can, deep dive more into that during the demo session. And Kubecost, we has been founded from 2019, and currently we have more than 10,000 team using our product right now. Thank you for the collaboration with Amazon EKS team to be the cost monitoring solution for Amazon EKS. And right now, the latest data that I have, we help to manage the cost of more than $3 billion of the Kubernetes workload right now. And we have more than 100 paying customer.
Oh, that's great. So then how can Kubecost help solve those problems, the cost attribution challenges and problems that Ranjit and you talked about?
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the challenge first. So I can, show you, what feature that Kubecost has today to help you to solve those challenges. So like I share, I work with, many SaaS vendor in the past, and these are the challenges. They are key challenges that I see that they are facing right now. So the first one is the cost allocation and the measurement. So as you may already know, when you're building the SaaS application, especially the multi-tenant SaaS application on Amazon EKS, is already complicated. And in order to get the cost of each tenant running inside your Amazon EKS cluster is even more complicated because uh, the main challenge here is to measure the usage of each tenant and even the share the share services that being consumed by multiple tenants as well. For example, like the database or like the monitoring the the monitoring application that running on a specific namespace that being used by multiple tenants. Let's assume that you organize your multi-tenant environment, by namespace.
Mm.
So that's and the challenge here is, this is really complicated to like measurement, instrument, the cost of each tenant, and get the detailed deposit for the users of each tenant. And the challenge, just become increasingly more difficult when your SaaS business growing up and you have like multiple EKS clusters span across multiple AWS regions, and even in some cases I even see that the SaaS provider also have the Amazon EKS cluster running not only on the cloud but also on-prem for different purposes, and it is become more complicated when you have like multiple cluster in multiple regions. So you have to go to different places to collect the data and to get the visibility into the multi-cluster. So there's a need to unify the cost monitoring for multiple cluster in multiple environments in one place. So you can show your executive team, your FinOps team, your finance team, what's the cost per tenant so they can make the informed decision for the business. And even if you have the visibility into the cost per tenant, for multiple environment, the other challenge that I see our customer today facing is the cost optimization and reducing the wasted resources for those environments. So, like I said, if you have multiple cluster running on multiple environment, even you have cost data, you also need to understand the actual usage of those resources. Is this actually utilize the requested resource, or is the resource being under provisioning? So you need to get a report, or get the insight into what resource that you need to increase or decrease for each tenant. And the last key challenge that I see is the cost management reports and alerts. So like I mentioned, during the peak season, you will have like unexpected workload per tenant. So you need to set like an alert or the notification to tell you if a specific tenant namespace that has the workload just exceeding the budget that you set for each tenant, or each resources. So this and to set it up for like multiple environment, multiple cluster is a real challenge that customer facing today. And with that, Kubecost offer multiple features that help you with that. So we have the cost allocation feature that allow you to get the visibility into the cost of the Kubernetes application, or like the cost per tenant running inside your Kubernetes cluster. And you can you can have the unified view of the multi-cluster under a single pane of glass or a single dashboard, like that I will show you in the demo. And uh, Kubecost also have the alerts feature for the showback or trackback purpose, that going to notify you if a certain tenant or namespace exceeding the certain threshold. You're going to get the alerts via email or with the integration with some well-known messaging application like Slack or Microsoft Teams. You can get the alerts from that as well. And based on the actual usage of your workload of your multiple cluster, Kubecost also give you the saving recommendation and the estimated cost that you can save if you apply those saving recommendation. And today, Kubecost can run on any Kubernetes platform on anywhere from the cloud environment to the on-prem environment. And we just launched our SaaS offering as well called Kubecost Cloud. If you prefer to use the SaaS platform to help you to manage the Kubernetes cost, we also offer that option today. So now we have two main deployment type. One is the self-hosted that you can install on Kubecost on your environment and get a cost report, or you can use our SaaS offering to help you to manage that.
And for that part, when you're deploying it in your Kubernetes cluster, is that like a sidecar, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Gunnar. So Kubecost application, it is packaged inside Helm-check, so you can easily install Kubecost by a simple Helm-check command. And when Kubecost being installed on your Kubernetes cluster, is running as a deployment, under a deployment controller, and you can install it easily with a single Helm-check install command, and it can be up and running in just like under 5 minutes. And if you prefer to use, your current, CI/CD pipeline to deploy Kubecost, you can also generate the manifest from the Helm-check to, use your Argo CD or like Flux to deploy the Helm-check on your cluster as well. So there are many ways to do that today. And I can talk a little bit more about that if we have time. We also have the new integration with Amazon EKS as an third-party EKS add-on that you can easily install Kubecost on your Amazon EKS cluster just with a few clicks from the Amazon EKS console.
Right. So let's talk a bit about the integration with the SaaS reference architecture. Basically, why we have Ranjit here on the show as well. That's your usual topic, Ranjit, when you're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I remember, in fact, one of the first shows of this particular building SaaS on AWS was on the EKS SaaS reference architecture. So, and I know we have spoken about it a couple of times. So I'm not going to go like super deep into it. But let me see if I can get my screen share here going.
There we go.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So, I mean, just to give sort of a quick or set the context in terms of, so the AWS SaaS Factory team over the years, so we have put together a collection of best practices on SaaS and how to build multi-tenant SaaS solutions on top of AWS, right? So as part of that, we also build reference architectures. For example, we have reference architectures around serverless SaaS. We have we have a project called AWS SaaS Boost. And we also have this particular project, the EKS SaaS reference architecture, which is an example, end-to-end example of a multi-tenant SaaS solution that runs on top of Amazon EKS, right? So EKS is Elastic Kubernetes Service, which is the managed offering of Kubernetes from AWS. So, and maybe someone can drop the link to the GitHub repo. The source code is open sourced, so definitely check that out.
Yeah, and Anthony put the link to the GitHub repo and also link to the show. And Bill also wrote that it was the very first show of building SaaS on AWS. So you kicked it off, Ranjit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Since then, I think it has been a couple of years, and we have seen a lot of adoption, seen a lot of traction to that particular project, and also a lot of customer feedbacks, right? Requests for new features, requests for integrations with open source projects, like, for example, Kubecost and cost attribution was one of the top requests. So what we have done is we have done exactly that, right? So we have listened to our customers and we have integrated, with the help of Lynn, we have integrated Kubecost to this reference architecture. And just what you're looking at is, if I have to give you an overview of what it is like I said, it is an example SaaS solution, a multi-tenant SaaS solution running on a shared EKS cluster. There are a couple of websites that lets you onboard a tenant and set up their identity. We use Amazon Cognito to do that. But more importantly, at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we are using a single EKS cluster. There are some shared services, almost like control plane services, that handles registration and user management and their identity and all that. And there are some application services like product and order. And the design decision that we, or the model that we went with here was, we create a namespace per tenant. Like we create a Kubernetes namespace for every single tenant or a customer that we onboard into this environment. And namespace is the sort of logical cluster inside the larger Kubernetes cluster, which gives you almost sort of an isolation boundary. You need to apply other controls on top of it, but it gives you this little space within a shared EKS or a shared Kubernetes cluster. And that's the model we went with. And I know there are customers that use other models, perhaps a shared namespace for maybe a subset of tenants, but the model that we went with here for this particular project was we create a dedicated namespace per tenant. So when you have a dedicated namespace, it makes it easier. It makes it a little bit easier, at least from the compute standpoint, to attribute cost, right? For example, Lynn was talking about how to get Kubecost and install Kubecost. I'm sure he'll cover that a little bit in his demo, which is coming next. But when you install Kubecost into a Kubernetes cluster or an EKS cluster, it basically runs as a deployment, right? So it is a deployment. It has a set of pods that runs alongside the other pods in your environment. It is running in its own namespace though, and there is cost analyzer pod. There is a Prometheus pod, which basically scrapes the tenant deployment and the cluster level metrics. For example, if there are a couple of namespaces, at least in this particular picture, right? So there is a tenant one namespace, tenant one's services running within that namespace, and tenant two has the same setup. Kubecost is able to ingest all that data, scrape those data along with the other cluster level metrics, and it stores them within that Prometheus pod. And then cost analyzer pod is the one that's actually doing the cost allocation calculations, right? And there is also an optional integration with the AWS cost and usage report, which we'll get into shortly. But at a high level, this is kind of the setup, and we have integrated Kubecost into our EKS SaaS reference architecture. So definitely check it out. We have the links. I'm told we have the links in the chat. So definitely check it out. And I'll come back after Lynn is done with this demo. So we'll talk about this project a little bit more. But yeah, so this is exactly what we have, Gunnar.
Oh, very cool. And when we started out, we've talked for 20 or so minutes now. We talk a lot about Kubernetes. We talk a lot about Amazon EKS, but that's not really how an entire environment looks like for most customers building. They also use other AWS services. So Lynn, does Kubecost only focus on the Kubernetes part, or does it also include those other AWS services, be it S3 or whatever it might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So why Kubecost, mainly feature is to give you the visibility and the recommendation for saving cost of the Kubernetes cluster, but we also give you the visibility into the cost per each AWS services that is associated with your Kubernetes workloads as well. Our entire cost that inside your AWS account. So I can show you in the demo. So there are two key things to answer your question. Just want to summarize it. So Kubecost does give you the visibility into the cost of each AWS services, and also have the feature to map the cost associated with the AWS services being used by the content application running into your Amazon EKS cluster as well. So you can map the cost of each AWS service back to the uh, cost of each tenant. So you can have the full picture of how each tenant consume the resources assigned.
Right. Oh, that's great. So, Lynn, I think since we are so far into the episode already, time really flies. I think we want to see Kubecost in action now. So I know you have a demo for us to show what it actually looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I show on the screen right now is the Kubecost, dashboard or the Kubecost UIs. Once you finish installing Kubecost on your Amazon EKS cluster, and after a while, Kubecost will gather the data, and this is the default view when you get access to the Kubecost. So first, this is the overview page that gives you the high level of the cost associated with your Amazon EKS cluster, as well as the cost of your AWS account. So you can see the total cost of the Kubernetes cost for your multiple cluster, and the total cost that include all of the cost of your Amazon that include your Amazon cloud cost plus Kubernetes cost. So and you can Kubecost also give you the possible saving recommendation. How much would you save if you apply those recommendations, like I shared previously? And this is just a high level of the cost and the cluster efficiency that we will get into more details in a couple of minutes. And by default, Kubecost give you the high level cost of each cluster that you have the Kubecost installed on. Like we have two cluster connect to, with the Kubecost install, and Kubecost was able to report the details of the cost of each cluster. So you can see the status is active, and Kubecost is also be able to tell the high level cost of the other Amazon EKS cluster inside your AWS account as well, even you don't have the Kubecost installed on each cluster. So, but it will give you the high level or the total cost of each cluster only, and you can also see the cost for each cluster trending over time as well. So you can get better visibility and better idea on how the cost generated by each Kubernetes cluster over the time, and also give you the cluster efficiency score, basically the utilization score of the resources consumed by each content application running inside your Kubernetes cluster. And you can also find the other information about the cost at high level in the overview page, including the cost breakdown by each namespace, which is the most common way that many SaaS providers use to organize their tenant resources. And Kubecost give you the top 10 namespace cost trending over time as well. So you can get the high level overview about the cost in multiple cluster running on multiple AWS account on multiple environment. And like Ranjit just mentioned earlier, optionally, you can also integrate Kubecost with the AWS cost usage report. Basically, you give Kubecost the root permission to your cost and usage report. So Kubecost can also get more details about the cost associated with each AWS services. So right now, I have the integration in my demo environment with the master buyer account of master AWS buyer AWS account, that I can get the visibility into the cost across multiple AWS account under my AWS organization and the cost associated with each services. So you can get the details of those, of the cloud cost as well. And optionally, Kubecost also have a very, sorry.
This is live, folks. This is
Yeah,
just to show
just
you
my
that we're live.
Yeah.
Sorry. So one of the most exciting feature that I love the most about Kubecost is Kubecost also gives you the visibility into the network egress cost generated by each Kubernetes objects or Kubernetes namespace as well. So you can see, the cost generated by the traffic in, traffic out in and out from each namespace. We will get into the details in a couple of minutes. The next thing I would like to show you is the most important feature that we've been talking about Kubecost that help the SaaS provider to solve their cost allocation, cost attribution challenge is the allocation views. In this view, Kubecost will give you the breakdown cost aggregated by most of the Kubernetes context. What I mean by that is you can aggregate the cost by namespace, which is the most common way the SaaS provider used to isolate the resource or organize the resource per each tenants. You can say, Kubecost give you the nice breakdown cost, in different categories here, but we will get into that in next like 1-2 minutes. I would like to show you that you can not also aggregate the cost by namespace, but you can aggregate with Kubecost. You can aggregate the cost by different Kubernetes objects from the cluster level, like the cost per each cluster, to even the container level, and you can aggregate the cost using the multiple aggregation. For example, now you would like to see the cost for each tenant organized by namespace. For each cluster, you can select multiple aggregation, select the cluster, and then select the namespace. Because we change the report for you and show the cost associated with the each namespace by each cluster. All right, and let's get back to the default view. So I would like to show you how Kubecost, give you the granule, the cost of each container. So from the default view here, if you click on a specific namespace, for example, I click on the Kubecost namespace here, this will drill down into the next level of the Kubernetes object, which is the controller, right? Or the controller for the workload running inside a specific namespace, like a deployment. And if you would like to drill down into a specific deployment, you can click on the line, and this will go to the next level, which is the pod level. This will give you the nice breakdown per cost per pod, so you can have the better visibility of how the resource is consumed by pod and what potentially cost the most for you, and the reason behind that. You can drill down as much as into the container level. So when you click on a specific pod, it will give you the nice breakdown of the cost associated by each container, and how it's consuming the resource that generate that kind of cost, right?
And I suppose this could be very useful when we see it as that help in making decisions. So understanding what different features within your SaaS product might cost you actually.
Yep, is correct. And I say many of our customer utilizing it right now. So just want to share that Kubecost is the API first application. So most of the data that I show you here in the UI is can also be able to programmatically get from an API endpoint provided by Kubecost as well. So if you have Kubecost installed, you can programmatically extract the cost data into your own analytics platform, BI platform. For example, I have many AWS customer extract the cost to an Athena database, and then show it on the quick start for a deeper analytics purpose.
There's a question in the chat from Daniel. How Kubecost works with spot or reserved instances, if that's visible, or if you can make use of that in Kubecost.
Yeah, that is a great question, and that's the answer. The short answer is yes. Kubecost will be able to reflect on of the saving recommendation and the reserve instance that you have inside your AWS account when you integrate Kubecost with the AWS cost and usage report. So by doing that, Kubecost will look into the AWS cost and usage report that's going to be updated, I believe, every 24 hours inside your AWS account. Kubecost, we try to do it every 6 hours, but as long as Kubecost get the new data inside your AWS cost usage report, Kubecost will reconcile the data, reconcile the data to show any discount that you have and apply that, and into the cost per namespace or the cost aggregated by different Kubernetes contexts.
That's great. All right.
Yeah, just if you have any question, feel free to let me know, and please feel free to stop me anytime. So just get back to the allocation. Sorry, this is the most exciting view that I love the most for Kubecost. So I will talk a lot about this. So feel free to stop me if there are any question, or if you would like to learn more about the other feature of Kubecost. Another thing that I would like to share is you see the cost breakdown by different categories here for Kubecost, that including CPU, GPU, memory consumed by the resources, and even PV like persistent volume or the storage cost. And the network cost that I mentioned earlier as well, like the cost associated with each namespace for the traffic generated by that namespace, and the load balancer cost, and even the share cost. So what the share cost mean here is the cost of, for example, the cluster management fee that you can also tell Kubecost how much this cost, and it can be distributed evenly or proportionally to each Kubernetes object in your report. So when it's being distributed proportionally, it means the cost will be distributed based on the actual usage of each object in your report. And you can also include the cost of for example, like a namespace that being consumed by different namespace as well, like the monitoring namespace, like that has Prometheus running on, maybe even Kubecost running on, that you would like to distribute the cost of that share namespace, of the share resources to different, tenant Kubernetes objects. And the next one is the efficiency score of each, Kubernetes object or namespace here. The efficiency score basically is the how. So let's talk about how do we calculate. We calculate it by the max of the requested resource versus the user resources. So it tells you the utilization of the requested resource, whether your workload is under provision or over provision. Like in the Kubernetes context, when a workload is running, you assign a requested resource first, right? So it's with the efficiency score will tell you whether it's utilized on of the requested resources, or it just like use like just 7.6% of the requested resource, or it's actually utilize the 100% of the requested resource. Or when you see it's over 100% like this one, it means that the requested resource is not enough. So the actual user exists the requested resource. So it will tell you how much is the basically give you the better idea of how each Kubernetes object is utilize the resources that being requested, right? And the total cost for each Kubernetes object and namespace. And if you would like to get a better details of, my screen is a little bit so
Yeah, I just have a quick, while you're pulling that up, Lynn. So you mentioned Prometheus, right? So if you're running Prometheus in a separate namespace, so that would show up as an entry in this particular table right here, right? So it would show that cost. But Prometheus is actually bundled along with Kubecost, right? So when you install Kubecost, there's a Prometheus pod, which is like a data store for all the metrics. But let's say you have your own Prometheus instance or instances or setup, Kubecost can still integrate with that, right?
Yep, that is a great question, and you are totally correct here, Ranjit. So for the Kubecost installation, by default, we have a Prometheus instance bundle inside the Kubecost, but we also support if you already have your own existing Prometheus, and Kubecost can also integrate with that. And if you prefer not to manage the Prometheus by yourself, which is a really painful work, you can also utilize the other hosted Prometheus services like Amazon Managed Prometheus. We also have many integration with the Amazon Managed Prometheus that Kubecost can use this as a central time series database to store the metrics as well. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have more integration with Amazon Managed Prometheus that you can use as well. So And if you have the existing Prometheus that running on different namespace, Kubecost can also support that. That's a great question. Thank you, Ranjit.
Yep.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, I would like to show you another thing, which is the details of the cost associated by each namespace. So if you inspect a specific namespace like Kubecost, it gives you better details of the cost associated by each namespace and give you a nice graph to see the cost trending over time as well. So you get better idea how the cost generated by each namespace, and it gives you the cost efficiency, in a better graph. Like you can see how the CPU is being utilized and how many memory is being utilized. You see is over like 500% right now. That's mean the requested memory is being under provisioning, so I need to assign more resource for Kubecost in this case. And then it give you some idea around like what is potential saving you can have, and how much though this would save you if you click on the request sizing. I will click on the other tab because I would like to show the other thing as well. So it will give you a nice report of how the application running inside a namespace utilizing the resources, and based on that, Kubecost will give you a recommendation of what resources that need to be associated with each deployment inside your uh, specific namespace and the estimated saving cost. But I would like to give another. I would like to talk about the other thing about the cost visibility. This also gives you the better idea about the cost associated by each controllers, the performance inside what is the candidate for out memory efficient, so you can have the appropriate action on whether change the resource assigned to each to different Kubernetes object or content application running inside Kubecost to avoid going to be evicted if your Kubernetes cluster run out the resources. And the network cost. The network cost, if you enable it optionally, is not turned on by default, but you can turn it on when you install Kubecost, and it's even available for our free tier as well. It will give you the nice overview of the cost generated by different AWS service that being associated with this specific namespace. And if you click on the visit network page, it gives you the nice overview of how the cost is generated for each different category of the network traffic, like internet, egress, cross-zone, cross-region. If you click on a specific, for example, pod, it gives you the nice history of how the traffic being generated as well. So I will stop here, just in case if you have any question or anything you would like me to show.
So Lin, you mentioned now the free tier. So can you just do a quick rundown on the options for running Kubecost?
Yeah, because our goal is to help the customer adopt Kubecost as easy as they can, and help them to get better visibility into the cost of the Kubernetes cluster. So we have different tier. So Kubecost has been in 2019. Kubecost started as an open source open source software, and then we also released the commercial software, but we still keep our free tier for the customer to use Kubecost for free. And we offer a rich feature for the customer to use with the free tier. You can install Kubecost on multiple cluster for free, unlimited number of cluster for free, and you can get the visibility into the cost of your Kubernetes cluster even with the free tier, but it only gives you the single view of each cluster. So if you have multiple cluster, you have to go to different endpoint to get the visibility. But we also offer the other rich feature for the free tier as well, like the network cost. It gives you the visibility of the network cost, which is like I would say um, the most feature being asked by the customer, even during the time I work at AWS and during the time I work at Kubecost. Like customer would like to have better visibility into the cost generated by the network. So that is for free tier, and with the collaboration with Amazon EKS, we also have different tier called AWS Optimized package that offer more optimized configuration and specific feature for the AWS customer as well. If you have the workload running on the Amazon EKS cluster, stay tuned for that. We're going to launch more integration with Amazon EKS and offer a richer feature for that specific tier. And we also have the enterprise tier that basically our base tier that help you to get richer feature, better feature, more the specific enterprise feature. For example, like this one is I enabled the free trial. You can have 30-day free trial to use our enterprise feature as well. So with the enterprise feature, if you have the Kubecost installed on multiple cluster, you can send the data into the one central place like S3 bucket or a central Amazon managed Prometheus, and Kubecost can show the cost associated with each cluster from multiple cluster, multi-environment in one place for you, and give you the saving recommendation for multiple cluster from one primary cluster. And with Kubecost Enterprise, so by default, you can have the visibility back into the last 7 days of the cost inside your Kubernetes cluster. And for free tier, you can go you can go as much as 15 days. But with enterprise feature, you can have the visibility of the cost report up to 90 days or unlimited.
Right.
So that's just, few things about free tier. I don't want to talk about the enterprise feature. I don't want to talk much about that because I would like to show how Kubecost help the customer and the Kubecost features. So yeah, if you would like to learn more about enterprise feature, feel free to contact us. I believe Anthony will share the link there. And if you would like to learn how Kubecost can help you with the enterprise feature, feel free to reach out to us.
Bunch of links shared in the chat by Anthony and Bill already. So Ranjit, I want to jump over to the SaaS reference architecture again, and maybe we can dive a bit deeper into the integration with Kubecost.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'm bringing up my screen. Like we mentioned before, the EKS SaaS reference architecture, it's publicly available. It's an open source solution that's been around for a couple of years now, but we have been making constant improvements, listening to customer feedbacks, and that's how the integration with Kubecost happened. So when you go to this link, GitHub link, start following the instructions right here. You'll have, and if you deploy this in your AWS account, obviously you'll have an example, like an end-to-end example of an multi-tenant SaaS solution running on top of Amazon EKS, right? So a few steps, like 4 or 5 steps, it takes about 35 to somewhere between 35 and 45 minutes to spin up the entire set of infrastructure from the cluster to all the shared resources, the dedicated resources. You should have an entire setup up and running within that time frame. And assuming you have gone through these steps, you will see a few websites. You'll have access to a few websites. The first one is an admin application, right? And if you remember the conceptual view of the stack slide that I was showing earlier in the show, there were like 3 websites, and one of them was the admin website. So this is the SaaS provider's admin site, right? So this is where the SaaS provider would actually go in and look for their tenants. So for I think right now, so I may have to quickly sign back in.
Oh no.
No, I think there's probably a minor
security is our top priority. So
yeah, I know, right? So yeah, so it is. We have signed in now as a SaaS admin here, and you can see that we have a few tenants, right? So this is a demo application. This is an example application. So we have onboarded 3 tenants, tenant 100, 200, and 300. And if you go to the tenants tab, you can provision new tenant using this by clicking this button. But we also have Kubecost integrated into this application, like we mentioned before. And if you want, the way we did that is like if you go to the Kubecost documentation and follow this link. So this link is actually in our planning document. So Bill or Anthony, if you can grab that and put it in the chat. So all you have to do is just basically follow the steps listed in this particular link. So this will get you Kubecost installed as a deployment as part of the EKS cluster, right? And once you have that, you will be able to. So in this case, I've set up an ingress. I've set up an ingress resource. Like you can see that the domain is kubecost.aws dev shop. So this is my domain. So there is a Route 53 entry, basically that points Kubecost. So I'll make this slightly bigger so you can see this. Yeah. So the kubecost.domain.com just points to a network load balancer, right? And this is because I have an ingress definition running within the EKS cluster that actually set this up. And I also have an external DNS running within the cluster that put this entry into Route 53. But assuming you have gone through those steps and set that up for external access of Kubecost dashboard, when you go to the dashboard, this is the view that you're going to see. And this is very similar to the view that Lynn was showing you, right? So it gives you the monthly Kubernetes cost, and there is some savings identified, and there's a whole bunch of cost allocation and other asset costs. But I want to go to this cost allocation tab here, and because our goal is to look at the tenant compute cost, right? So in this case, like I said, we have onboarded 3 tenants into the system, into the SaaS solution. So there's a tenant 100, there's a 200, there's a tenant 300, like 3 tenants running, and you can see that tenant the breakdown of the cost for each tenant, right? So at the CPU level, at the RAM level, at there's other shared costs that Lynn was talking about, and it is distributed, and basically see a distribution across tenants, like what each tenant has incurred, right? So when they're running the workloads. So now if I want to, if I drill down into one of the tenants, like I see tenant 200 right here has a, and this is a new cluster. I mean, it's the cost, the values that you see here, it's not like exorbitant because I just spin up this cluster, I believe yesterday. So that's why you see the small numbers. But the idea is like, I want to see this particular tenant, they're costing $1, while the other tenants are probably a few cents, right? So I want to see why that's the case. So if I drill down to the deployments, and if I go and see, there are a couple of services, right? So remember I said there's going to be an order service, there's going to be a product service running inside each tenant's namespace. So I want to see what's going on here. And I see that the order deployment has incurred like 87 cents, way more than the product service, right? And I can, further drill down to the order service just to see what's going on. And when I can click on this, go to this breakdown section, and see here, I have a whole bunch of order pods or replicas running. Like I have close to perhaps 20, 25 of them running, or even more. Perhaps there was some kind of a scaling event, and that spun up a bunch of order pods and order replicas here, and this is the reason why you see a higher cost for this particular service, and then in turn for that particular tenant, right? So this is a level that you can drill down. Like Kubecost is able to provide so this level of information. You can drill down to the container level, to the pod level, and see exactly which container or which pod is incurring the most cost, right? And there is also a health tab here. I can see that my cluster is perhaps facing some compute pressure. There is some memory, because I did this on purpose. I provisioned a lot of resources, so the cluster utilization, because I wanted to show you this particular view, and Kubecost is able to tell you this or show you this view and show you the health of the cluster, right? But more importantly, the view that we are after is this particular view, and this is exactly what Lynn was focusing as well. If we have multiple tenants and each tenants have their own namespace and their workloads running within that namespace, you're able to derive the cost for each tenant, and this is the compute cost, right? So this is the pods and the workloads running for that particular tenant within the EKS cluster and inside the namespace. So so this is basically what I wanted to show, and like I said, we'll definitely go check out the EKS SaaS reference architecture, spin it up, install Kubecost by following the link, the directions in this link. And what we are going to do is we are going to take this and add this to the README so that you have all the directions in one place. So that will happen within the next couple of days. But yeah, feel free to check it out and let us know your feedback. What do you think about it?
Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranjit. Oh, sorry. I just would like to add one quick thing here. So you may see the difference between the UIs, that Ranjit showed you and the UI that I just demoed to you. So I just want to clarify that the one that Ranjit just showed on the screen right now is our, default, or I would not say default. Our standard UI has been there for a long time, and we just released the new UI since the version 1.100, if I remember it correctly. So the new UI that I show you in my demo is the new UI. So you can switch back and forth between this standard UI and the new UI. So you will have it both if you depend on which UI that you would like to prefer.
So question, Ranjit, from Charu, can the Kubecost Helm be added to the data on EKS projects?
So for this,
or maybe for Lynn,
yeah, for this question, so to be honest, I'm not familiar with data on EKS, but I would love to learn more about that. And because my main job here is to integrate Kubecost with different AWS services, and I would love to learn more about that. So if you can reach out to us, via the contact us, I believe Anthony can share with that, and share more about that. I would love to learn more and how we can integrate Kubecost with data on EKS.
That's great. Right. And then I suppose we don't have time to cover that, but the next step then, because we've looked at it as a way to get insights into your platform and to understand usage and costs and so on. But the next step would be to basically make use of this data, or could be make use of this data for billing purposes as well. And we've had an episode before about integrating with Stripe for billing. And in this case, I suppose we could then use the data that we gather with the help of Kubecost to then move into whatever billing platform we're using. And we have that episode. I think Anthony can share it in the chat as well to have a bit of guidance there. So we're quickly approaching top of the hour. So we are simply just going to wrap up now. We could probably have kept going for another hour as usual on this SaaS topics. Anthony also shared the link to a workshop. Lynn, I know that's your link that we've shared, so they can learn more about the EKS SaaS reference architecture and integrating that with Kubecost.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that workshop, you will have the instruction on how to install Kubecost and integrate Kubecost with different AWS services. And just a quick, introduction. We also have another workshop with another AWS team on May 18 as well, that you can have the opportunity to have the hands-on experience using that workshop as well. So if you would love to join us with that session, feel free to do that. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. And with that, I want to thank Ranjit for joining us for the 4th, 5th, 6th time, whatever it might be by now. And Lynn for joining us for the first time. Hope to have you back in the future as well. And of course, thanks to all of the viewers we've had. Questions, comments in the chat as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.